Hey guys, what's up? My name's Andrew. I'm the owner of Sonoran Rod Company, and I'm starting a small YouTube series just to kind of go through the basic building process for fishing rods. I get a lot of questions about building on my other pages, and so I decided to try and make kind of a helpful guide so that you can easily refer to it. So, first thing I do when I'm building a fishing rod is I decide how long my handle is going to be. This blank is a 7'4" heavy. So once you decide how long you want your handle to be, the next step is just to attach it. So I have a cork grip here. This is for a casting rod. Usually they come pre-drilled, but sometimes you'll have to ream it in order to get it to fit your blank. And so I'm going to do that real quick. So I have these. These are some extreme reamers from Mudhole. They are meant to bore through this and give it kind of that angled hole throughout it so that it fits more snugly on your blank. So let's get started. Okay, so now that we've got it reamed, I have it here on my blank. I have marked where I want it to fit for the length of my handle. And generally the rule that I kind of follow and that I learned when I was first starting to build is that you want it to be just snug enough so that you can move it into place with just 2 fingers. You don't want it to be overly tight because that makes it more likely that the cork might split under heat or other kinds of stress. And it also kind of gives more of the epoxy that you're going to be putting underneath it, gives it more room to kind of soak up into the cork rather than if it was super snug and you push it all off trying to get it all on there. You want a little bit of room in there so that the epoxy can kind of seep into the inside of the cork handle. So I also have a winding check here just to seal up the bottom of the handle once I get it in place. So I'll glue here and then I'll work this down so that it seals up around the bottom of this cork. I've got some ProPaste 2-part handle epoxy. Just gonna go ahead and mix that up and just get it spread on here nice and evenly. It's okay if we have a little bit of excess. You can get it off with just some rubbing alcohol. And now we're just gonna slide it into place until the black line on this side is visible. And you see what I was talking about earlier where you kind of push off some of the glue? That is why we don't want it to be too snug. So now we're at the marked point. This is where I want it to sit. And so I'm gonna remove the excess that I have before I bring the winding check down, just to make it a little bit less messy. So I'm just gonna get in here and as cleanly as I can scoop that out without smearing it. You don't need there to be very much underneath where the winding check is at all, more or less just to seal the bottom of the winding check. That is plenty. And now we're just going to take this and work it down with our thumbnail. Okay, make sure we didn't push it farther than we need to. Now we're just going to take a little piece of paper towel, some rubbing alcohol, and just clean off the excess. There we go. Make sure there's no excess down here either. There we go. Now this, generally with handle paste, you want to let it sit for at least 24 hours so that it fully cures. So this rod is going to go on the shelf until tomorrow, and we will assemble the rest of the handle assembly, which is just the reel seat, another winding check, and then from there on the hook keeper and all the guides and all that. But this is the first step. So let's come back to this tomorrow. All right, so it's been 24 hours and we're back. We're ready to finish up the handle on this. Next will come the reel seat. But before I do that, what I need to do is find the spine on this rod blank. During the manufacturing process, when the graphite or the carbon fiber is layered on itself, it kind of creates, there's usually a point of overlap where it creates kind of the backbone of the spine. And that's the most rigid axis. It's also where the most natural point of bend is. And so you'll want to strategically align your guides along that so that when you are, when the rod is under load, then it's the most natural bend and it gives you the most control over it. Sometimes, depending on the kind of grip you have, this one is symmetrical, but if you have something that's like directional, you'll want to find the spine earlier on in the process. But for a typical fishing rod grip that's just kind of the same all around, this is usually when I try and find mine, is right before I put the reel seat on, because reel seats are directional. And so to find the spine of your rod blank, what you do is put the butt on a safe non-scratchable surface, and you roll the blank while putting it under a light load, and the rod blank will kind of snap into position where along the spine. See how it's kind of snapping into this specific bend. So this axis right here is my spine. And I'm just gonna mark this so that I can place my guides along it. This is a casting rod, so instead of being on the spine itself, they'll be on the opposite side because, you know, when the rod is under load, it's gonna be that direction. And so this is a Fuji ACSM reel seat. This is my preferred reel seat of choice because it has this notch. This notch allows you to maintain contact with the blank with your finger, and it makes it a little bit, you're able to feel just like very, very small vibrations easier. So we're gonna go ahead and get this on here. And then something that I wanted to mention is whenever you're shopping for a reel seat, they are measured by the inner diameter. So this is an ACSM 16, which is like meant for reel size 16, dash 13 and a half. So 13 and a half because it's the outer diameter of the blank is measured at 13 and a half. So the inner diameter of the reel seat is usually around that. You may have to ream the reel seat a little bit to get it to fit nice and snug, which I had to do. We're gonna go ahead and mix more of the same Pro Paste, the 2-part epoxy, that's the handle glue, except right here, I am actually going to mix in a little bit of marbling pigment. Now, this is just a black marbling pigment, but basically what this will do is it will turn your epoxy or your glue, whatever color you put in here. So I'm using black because whenever this glue dries, it turns like a white pasty color. And when I'm looking in between the seam of the cork and the reel seat, when they're joined together, I don't want that pasty color to poke out. So I'm gonna have it blend in a little bit better by mixing in just a tiny bit of this pigment. And this is what we're left with. Nice, like deep, deep black that will blend in a little bit better with the color scheme of this rod. So we're gonna go ahead and get it spread nice and even on. All right, nice and spread on there. Make sure I'm aligned with my spine marking, and then we're just gonna slide this up on here. This is gonna fit pretty snug. You want it to be as snug as possible to the blank. I'm just gonna go ahead and clean off the excess here. One thing with having this notched reel seat is that there's usually a bunch of stuff right here, so you gotta pay special attention to make sure you get everything off of it. Okay, so that's pre-alcohol. Let's get this and really get in there. Get this nice and cleaned up. Next is another winding check. This is a black rubber winding check, and we're going to seal the other end of the reel seat with it. Just doing another very thin layer of glue, just because it's more of a sealant. Okay. Work this on here with our fingernail. Okay. Now this winding check does not sit exactly flush with the reel seat, so we may shave it down with a razor. Let's come back over here and inspect the parts that we wiped down. Looking a little bit better. I've noticed sometimes that rubbing alcohol can leave a little residue behind, so I find that going back a second time and just like maybe using a little bit less of it so you're not dousing the reel seat. This is just a little half spray, and it looks like a lot, but it'll evaporate quickly. Go over it with a wet one, and then take a dry one to it. You can help kickstart some of that evaporation. That is pretty much it. So we have the reel seat as flush on the tenon of this cork as we can get it. We cleaned out this. This is where you'll have contact with the blank while you're fishing. And then we have our winding check on the end of here to seal it all off and make sure that water doesn't get inside of there. And with these being so snug, it's very different from a spinning reel seat, which usually has like some masking tape or like a foam arbor underneath it that is the spacer between the blank and the reel seat. When there isn't space between the two and you get it as snug as possible, then there's less things in there for water to get in and kind of mess up. So that's a plus of getting it as snug as possible. But again, now that we have this epoxied, we just wait for it to fully cure. So we're gonna come back in a few hours. We're not gonna be actively working on this section. So like if you're using a fast set epoxy, as long as you don't mess with this section, you can get to the wrapping. But I personally would, even with the fast setting epoxy, I would leave it for a couple hours, 4 to 5 maybe, before I start working on the rest of the rod, just to make sure that I don't mess with the setting of this glue, because you're gonna have to redo everything if this comes unstuck. So we are gonna come back tomorrow again and start on the rest of the rod, and that's the hook keeper and the little signature section with the decals, and then adding all of the guides. So that'll be in the next part, I think. Let me know if this was helpful at all in the comments. I wanted to try and do longer form content. I mostly make shorts or TikToks or reels, but I can't explain myself as well in short form content as I can in a longer video like this. And so if there are any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. Any suggestions, anything I missed, anything I can do better. Other than that, we'll be back for part 2 tomorrow or so, or whenever the next video is, and I will get into the rest of the rod. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. See you next time.